Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 364. Thursday, March the 8th, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, I'm sure most of you have heard the news. Jeff Sessions, the eager beaver, the overachiever, has filed a lawsuit against California, and he went out to California to have his press conference. This is long overdue, very long overdue. And while Jeff Sessions may be playing possum or dropping the ball or whatever regarding the other things that we talk about here, mostly on TowerGate, on the issue of the illegal immigration and that type of thing, Sessions has done very well, in my opinion. And he really needed to do this. I mean, this was a major step, and he really needed to do this because things are really, really getting out of control. You know, I just talked to a friend of mine who was an Army buddy of mine, and we stay in contact, email and Facebook and things like that. And he said that there's an evacuation going on in California right now. Now, he lives about 30 minutes outside Los Angeles, and he said it's pretty insane what's going on there. Like he said, like around the Pasadena area, places like that. He said it looks like a third world country. Tent cities and things and such. People urinating, defecating on the streets. Totally protected. Now that reminds me of Europe, because that's the first time I saw something like that in my life. People actually urinating and defecating in public. That's what you see in Europe. But it's happening now in California, and he tells me that he's just about ready to get out of there. And this guy loves California. I mean, he's a California guy through and through, loves California. But he's just can't take it anymore. And he's born and raised there, been there for 50 years, and he just can't take it anymore. He's really seriously thinking about moving to Oregon or Washington or Nevada or somewhere. But he said things are really, really bad there. But in the case of this immigration, and particularly there's 3 laws that the state of California passed, which are just absolutely insane. One of those laws, one of the provisions in one of those laws, is that any resident of California who cooperates with the immigration department or with ICE can be held criminally liable. I mean, it is literally the state of California is at war with the federal government for trying to enforce federal policy there. Now, I'm a big believer in states' rights, but the immigration issue is something that should be the federal government, because you're talking about the security of the borders. Really is what you're talking about. But some of these laws are so wacky, it's hard to believe that any reasonable person with any common sense in their head whatsoever would enact any of these laws that you see in California. I mean, some of this stuff is just really crazy now. I mean, it's way out of control. It's a banana republic over there in California. And they have a lot of problems, man. I mean, they have debt problems. They have, and in fact, I'll tell you what's coming up for California in a couple years. I mean, their pension funds there, for state employees, California state employees, their pension fund's bankrupt. And eventually someone is going to have to bail that out, or those people are going to stop getting their pension checks, or they're going to be greatly reduced. California cannot manipulate the currency or anything like that, so there's nothing that they don't have the ability, to do that. I mean, unless they come up with their own currency, a California currency or something. I don't know what they're going to do, but that is a time bomb that's ticking away and is going to hit Californians very hard. And if they come looking to the other 49 states to bail them out, there's going to be hell to pay. But something that should be noted here, there are over 800,000 illegal immigrants in California with criminal records, many of them violent felonies, including rape, gun charges, robbery, armed robbery, things and such like that. Real violent criminals, man, that these laws in California are protecting these people. They're trying to get these people off the streets, get them out of the country, deport them, put them in jail, whatever. And here you have the state of California literally creating laws protecting nearly 1 million, like 800,000 criminal felons They have laws that they won't even put these people in jail. If they do get in jail and they find out that ICE or immigration may be coming for them, they release them. They have policies that prevent law enforcement in California from working with the federal government to try to get these criminal illegal aliens incarcerated or out of the country. I mean, this is insanity. That female mayor out there is crazy. And let me tell you, if one of those, and it will happen, this will happen, if one of those criminal illegal aliens commits a violent crime, a murder or something like that against a resident in that city of San Francisco where she is mayor, and we find out that that murderer was someone who was an illegal alien who ICE was trying to get to or immigration was trying to get to, and the state of California protected them, the family of that murder victim should sue not only the state of California, but that mayor personally. That mayor should be held accountable, as well as the governor should be held accountable for any crime committed by one of those criminal felon illegals. If they commit a criminal felony, and it's probably happening now, there's nearly 1 million of them. That's what they're doing. They're out committing felonies every day, and probably murders. And if you can tie these one of these criminal aliens back to the murder, and you can prove that it was an effort made by the federal government to put them in jail or throw them out of the country or whatever, and they were blocked by the state of California, that would be a hell of a good negligence case against the state of California, the governor, and specifically the mayor in San Francisco if that murder took place in San Francisco. So there's plenty of criminal liability here to go around, but you can only reach the conclusion at this point that that mayor in San Francisco is nuttier than a fruitcake. And of course we know Governor Moonbeam is out of his mind. But I mean, it's the people in California that elect these people. And it's not all the people in California. As I said, my friend is, I wouldn't consider him conservative, but, you know, he's not nutty. He's not a crazy-ass liberal. I have another friend who is in San Diego, and San Diego is pretty conservative. You know, San Diego is a fairly conservative town. But, you know, you get San Francisco, Los Angeles, and all the greater surrounding Los Angeles area. Man, I mean, that place is just overrun with idiots, stupid people, literally. These are people who are committing suicide. They're supporting politicians who implement policies which could be dangerous to them. I mean, can you imagine living in a city where the politicians say, no, we know we have X amount of 100,000 or 1 million criminal defendants, but we are going to protect them. I mean, if you're a resident in that city, what in the world, how in the world would you even rationalize that in your mind? That your local politicians, your mayor or what have you, is telling you that they're going to protect the criminals that are in your neighborhood. The criminals that could kill you or your family or your friends. Yet, they can't wait to go vote for these people. I mean, they almost deserve what they get, but we're kind of attached to them. It's not like we can, you know, I mean, California says they want to secede. You know, I'd like to kick them out of the United States. We'll make a trade. We'll give, how about we'll take Hungary. I like Hungary. I love the president over there of Hungary. How about we trade? We'll give Europe California if they give us Hungary. I'd be willing to make that deal. Anyway, congratulations to Jeff Sessions. I'm pretty hard on Jeff Sessions. I know a lot of us are very hard on Jeff Sessions. But I'll give him credit when credit is due. And it took him a while to get around to it, but he did the right thing by going out to California and taking a tough stand, and he should enforce it. And I believe, again, that there should be criminal charges. They should actually hold the mayor and the governor of California criminally liable if any of these criminal aliens commit a violent act against a resident of that state, whether the residents of that state like it or not. They might not be smart enough to save themselves, but you have to have some degree of rule of law. Now, this case is most likely, I don't know, it's hard to say. I'm not sure where it's going to be tried, if it's in California or if it's in D.C., where the jurisdiction is here. But I can tell you regardless, let me tell you how this is going to play out. Whoever wins or loses the case, they're going to appeal. The loser's going to appeal. This case will go all the way to the Supreme Court. It will take about 2 years, and eventually the Supreme Court will rule on this particular deal, and I think they'll rule in favor of the Attorney General and the Trump administration. I think that's the way the judges will rule. Just because federal immigration enforcement is a federal issue. And so I do believe that this will go all the way to the Supreme Court, and I think that they'll rule in favor of Trump and the Attorney General. Sessions also did an interview with Fox News, and in regards to the second general counsel, he was asked. He did not volunteer this information, and I believe the woman doing the interview was Shannon Breen. And so she asked Sessions about this issue in regards to the second special counsel, the request made by these Republicans who sent the letter, by Graham and Grassley, following behind Gowdy and Goodlatte. A lot of pressure being brought on Sessions, and his response was the following. He says, "I have appointed a person outside of Washington many years in the Justice Department to look at the allegations that the House Judiciary Committee members sent to us, and we're conducting that investigation." I hope when he says "we're," he's not talking about him and Rodenstein. And it's kind of funny because he did not send a letter to Goodlatte or Gowdy or Grassley or Nunes or any of them and say, "Okay, I've heard your request. I'm now going to comply with your request. I'm going to appoint someone, a special counsel, whatever. I'm going to do something." He never did. He never came out and made a public statement. Normally, when they appoint a special prosecutor or something, the Attorney General comes out and has a press conference and says, "Okay, in light of the various information we have received, it appears that there is probable cause that a crime may have been committed. Therefore, I am going to appoint a special counsel to investigate this." And then you'll say, "Well, we're going to investigate this, this, and this." They'll say what the parameters of the investigation are and what the specific targets are and this type of thing. But we did not get that. Sessions did not come out and volunteer that in the press conference. He didn't come out and make a statement. There was no statement from his office. This came out when he was asked the question by this reporter from Fox News, and then he gives this sort of general response. "I have appointed a person," doesn't say who it is, "outside of Washington," doesn't say where it is, "many years in the Justice Department," okay, "to look at all the allegations." Not very specific. There's a lot of allegations out there. Which ones is he talking about? And what are the parameters? "That the Judiciary Committee members sent to us, and we're conducting that investigation." But the Judiciary Committee is really looking a lot into the dossier and that type of thing. Not so much the FISA stuff. That's the House Intelligence Committee that's looking into the FISA warrants and all that sort of stuff. That's Nunes. So it's a very general, very broad statement. It doesn't say that this individual has the ability to convene a grand jury, to subpoena witnesses and evidence, to levy charges against those found to be criminally liable, or to lay indictments against them. He doesn't say any of this. Now, I imagine just because of what he said here, that's going to raise a lot of questions, and I assume over the next 2 or 3 days, this will be vetted out, and we will get more information about maybe who this person is, how large of a team that he has, what his specific parameters are that of things he can look into, whether or not he has the ability to convene a grand jury, and whether or not he has the ability to launch indictments against those who, after their testimony into the grand jury, appear to be lying or are criminally liable. It'll be interesting to see what powers this individual has. Are we talking about a real special counsel, a real prosecutor, or are we talking about some, third party outside Washington just to have a look? Just have a look. Because that's what it kind of sounds like. But this is not going to cut the mustard. What we want is a real special counsel with a real investigation who can indict people, who can subpoena witnesses, who can convene grand juries, and all these sorts of things. This is what we have to have. This is what we have to have. And so I think we'll learn more in the days to come. A big win for the Justice Department, a big win for the House Intel Committee and a big loss for the Justice Department and Attorney General Lynch, former Attorney General Holder, especially Attorney General Holder, who's been running his mouth off a lot lately, and also Jeff Sessions. So there's been a legal battle, litigation going on now for 6 years with the House Intelligence Committee trying to get documents pertaining to the Fast and Furious scandal, which Eric Holder would not release. Therefore, he found himself in contempt of Congress. Nothing was done to force his hand. So he was placed in contempt of Congress and never did turn over the documents that were requested by the committee which has oversight, that being the House Intel Committee, and I assume the House Judiciary Committee as well as the House Oversight Committee. So finally, this litigation has come to an end today. After 6 years, the battle is over, and the House Judiciary Committee has won. They have won this fight, and it was the House Judiciary Committee that brought this. So that means now that the Justice Department must hand over all the requested documents pertaining to the Fast and Furious operation, which was run under Eric Holder, the most criminal Attorney General we may have ever had. And I'm even saying even more than the two Attorney Generals who went to jail during Watergate, Kleindienst and Mitchell. 2 Attorney Generals went to jail in Watergate, John Mitchell and Richard Kleindienst. They were corrupt, but Holder is miles corrupt beyond Kleindienst and Mitchell. So there you go. The first lawsuit has now been filed against the Broward County School District by one of the shooting survivors. I'm surprised it took so long. I thought that would have been done by now. But there'll be more. There'll be many more lawsuits filed. That's just the first. I think they're waiting for more information in the FBI report to come out. Be my guess. But there will be more. Just like there will be many, many lawsuits filed in the Las Vegas shooting when that report finally comes out. If that report ever comes out. Yes, we haven't forgotten about Las Vegas. Scientists are now 99% sure that the bones found on an island in 1940 are the remains of Amelia Earhart. She was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic, which she did in 1937. And of course, I think it was 37. Now she, of course, came up missing in 1937 over the Pacific. And these remains were discovered on an island called Nikumario. It's a island, I guess, in the South Pacific. It's about 400 miles south of where Earhart was supposed to have made her next pit stop, but she never made it. And so they never knew what happened. Well, in 1940, there were these bones discovered. They believed at that time it possibly could have been her, but they really didn't have the ability or technology or what have you, or information they needed to prove it. But now, based on some recent work by scientists, they're now about 99% sure that the remains are the remains of Amelia Earhart. Now, she had a navigator with her as well. I don't know what happened to him, but we can assume that Amelia Earhart did not crash into the ocean, that she actually did manage to make it to this island and probably lived on that island until her death and was never rescued. Amazing. Chelsea Clinton, the love child of Webster Hubbell and the Rotten Reverend Clinton, told Stephen Colbert, that left-wing idiot, that it's okay to attack Ivanka. And she was responding to this thing about a reporter asking Ivanka about her father's affairs. So I guess now, according to Chelsea Clinton, it's okay to ask Chelsea Clinton about Bill Clinton, even though that's not a real father. Webster Hubbell is a real father, but if we were to have Chelsea there, we could ask her about Bill Clinton's multiple accusations of rape, forced rape, and the many, many, many women, and the other illegitimate son that he had, who ended up coming up dead here, I think from suicide about a year and a half ago, back in the summer of 2016, I think it was, who looked just like Bill Clinton. I'm sure many of you saw him. He was on Alex Jones. But anyway, there you go. Chelsea Clinton, the child, the love child of Webster Hubbell and the Right Reverend Clinton. She is also just as evil as her parents. She is really evil and really, really stupid, by the way. She has no future in politics, believe me. That's one dumb youngin'. Now, back to the New York Magazine story. I generally don't stay on a story for like 3 days or something like this, but this story is really important. And many people are starting to comment on it now. Last night I told you that Chuck Ross, a reporter I respect, pointed out 6 things in that story which that reporter stated now as fact. All things that we believed to be true, but never stated as fact. And of course I told you what the biggest bombshell was. There were really 2. One, that the story says that that Christopher Steele had been told by his intermediaries or his sources that the Russians had agents inside the DNC, and also a story about David Kramer, that David Kramer wanted to use the dossier, and what he wanted to do, he tried to get Senator Magoo, tried to get Senator Magoo to use the dossier to go up to Trump and say, okay, I got this dirt on you now, either resign or I'm going to make it public or whatever. Well, you know, of course that never happened because probably Magoo ran it by his lawyers and they said, who the hell told you to do that? Don't listen to that person, okay? Because first of all, that could very well be looked at as blackmail or something like that. Can you prove any of it's true or anything like that? So yeah, obviously that was horrible advice Mr. Kramer gave Senator Magoo, and he was smart enough, listening to his attorneys obviously, who told him that would not fly. So anyhow, the thing about this story is, this story is a flat-out plant by the intelligence community. No question about it. Absolutely no question about it. There are claims made in this story that are claiming that they are facts, that are things that no one else. So how do we know it's a CIA planted story? Because there's things that she says in the story that she's saying that are facts, as if they're proven facts. 6 things that Ross pointed out, 2 things that I pointed out that have never been really proven. We just believe them. And the way that we know that this was a planted story by someone in the intel community, probably CIA, is because no one else had this story. When this type of information comes out, every reporter in town's got it, and it's on every news site. It's on every news station, in every newspaper. No one. This New Yorker story and this New Yorker magazine came out, I think, on a Saturday or a Friday night or something. Even 3-4 days later, we still have no one else. No one else. Not the New York Times, not Washington Post, not Yahoo News, not Gateway Pundit, not Daily Caller, not even the AP Newswire. I checked the AP Newswire. Drudge, check anyone. No one is writing a follow-up story, asserting the facts that she asserts in her article as fact. No one. Now, a lot of you are thinking, well, wait a minute. John Brennan isn't the director of the CIA anymore. No, he's not. But just because Brennan isn't the director of the CIA doesn't mean that a lot of his buddies and people who are working with him on this aren't still in the CIA, because they are. Brennan's team and Brennan's people are still there. He's gone, but they're not, and he probably has plenty of communication with them. He's still working, you can bet on that, as is Clapper. Their necks are on the chopping block. They have no choice. It's a matter of life or death for them. You can bet that there are still people inside the CIA, and this story was a flat-out plant story. And especially no one else has got the story. And when I read that Christopher Steele sources tell him that there were Russian agents inside the DNC. Now wait a minute. Where did that come from? No one else has got that. No one. No one else has got the proof that Steele paid his sources. Where is she getting these things that she's stating as fact and proof in this article, and why is she printing it if she can't prove it? Why is she so confident? So back to this story. We also learned another thing in this story, that David Kramer, remember, Kramer is Senator Magoo's right-hand man, heads up the McCain Institute. He is the one who went to London, met with Christopher Steele, photographs and pages of the dossier, came back, showed it to McCain, and then when the dossier was basically complete with the exception of it did include the final memo, the 17th memo, totaling up the 35-page document. Then Christopher Steele directed Fusion GPS to send Kramer a copy. Kramer got his copy emailed to him from Fusion GPS, and then he gave it to McCain, who then gave it to Comey. Not that Comey needed it, because he already had it. So why did McCain why did Steele give Magoo a copy of a dossier to give to the FBI when Steele had already given it to the FBI himself and the CIA? That's a good question, isn't it? But anyway, getting back to this other claim made in this story, is that David Kramer never talks to anybody. He does not answer the phone, does not answer questions. You can walk up to him on the street, put a camera in his face, a microphone. He does not, he's totally zip it. Nothing. He does not say anything. Only his attorneys speak for him. And his attorneys, according to this story in New York Magazine, his attorneys are stating that David Kramer had no deal and no agreement, written or otherwise, with Christopher Steele, who he could share the dossier with. David Kramer didn't have any agreement whatsoever with Christopher Steele on who he could share the dossier with. Now, we know from the court hearings in the BuzzFeed case that Mr. Gubarev's attorneys had gone to court to interview a bunch of witnesses, one of which was David Kramer. David Kramer refused, so they ended up along with a couple other people. So Gubarev's attorneys went to the judge and they got subpoenas, and the judge forced these people to stand for depositions. One of them was David Kramer. Now, there were several other people, and the point is that that Gubarev's attorneys were trying to find out who gave the dossier to BuzzFeed. Now, after they interviewed Kramer and deposed Kramer, they went back to court and told the judge they no longer cared about the subpoenas for the other people or the other motions that they had filed to get that answer to that question, because they now knew the answer to the question. After interviewing David Kramer, they now learned who gave the dossier to BuzzFeed. That can only tell you one of two things. Either A, David Kramer admitted to giving the dossier to BuzzFeed, or B, he admitted to giving it to someone else who gave it to BuzzFeed. That's the only thing you can come from that particular situation. There's no other way to look at it. One of those two things happened. Either Kramer admitted he personally gave it to BuzzFeed, or he admitted he gave it to someone else who gave it to BuzzFeed. They learned after talking to Kramer how BuzzFeed got the dossier. Let's take a deeper look at Mr. Kramer, shall we? We've already done this once before, but we need to do it again. Kramer and the Bush connection. David J. Kramer is a neocon, a think tanker. He is touted on George W. Bush's website. I am going to provide a link for you to look at. It's just a simple web page, but there you'll see it. George W. Bush's website, his former presidential website, features an entire page on David Kramer. Of course, Kramer was the president of Freedom House. And if you go to Freedom House and look at their list of people who belong, it's basically the administrations of George Herbert Walker Bush and George W. Bush. That's who serves and passes through the Freedom House. We also have David Kramer was also on the board of the Halifax International Forum, one of 3 board members. And Sir Andrew Wood was the second other board member, and there's another guy. And it was at the Halifax International Forum where John McCain was introduced to Sir Andrew Wood, who told them about the dossier. And it was then that McCain said, okay, well then I want you, David Kramer, to go get in contact with Steele. And Sir Andrew Wood provided McCain and Kramer with the contact information. That all happened at the Halifax International Forum, where David Kramer is one of the 3 board members there. He's also, of course, at the McCain Institute. Now, Freedom House, if you want to get a little deeper into Freedom House, as I told you, it's a neocon think tank. It is a government-funded NGO. Do you know what a government-funded non-governmental organization is? It's a non-government organization funded by the government. What does that mean? It's a CIA front. It's a CIA front. They engage in intelligence gathering activities. They also engage in things such as influencing foreign elections, including coup d'etats. David Kramer is in the business of coup d'etats. Usually it's outside the U.S., but in this case, maybe he was involved in a inside the U.S. coup d'etat. Government-funded NGOs are CIA front companies. Mr. David Kramer is an operative, a deep state operative from the underworld, and he comes out of the Bush stable. Keep in mind who the Bushes are. They're one of the most powerful crime families in the world, and they're very closely connected to the Clintons. But keep in mind that David J. Kramer was also the Assistant Secretary of State under George W. Bush, and he is known as a Bush apparatchik. So he was in the State Department under George W. Bush and knows a lot of people in the State Department, who are probably a lot of the same people who were in the Rotten Reverend Clinton's State Department. One of them was named George Papadopoulos. Keep in mind that George W. Bush once said that Hillary Clinton was like a sister and that the Clintons are like family. Now, who did Trump defeat? Who was the man who was supposed to be the man? Jeb Bush. And who defeated him? Trump. And once he was defeated, they went to their backup, Marco Rubio, who also comes out of the Bush stable. Do you remember during that speech and that debate in South Carolina when Trump looked over at Jeb Bush and said, your brother knew there were no weapons of mass destruction? He lied about those weapons of mass destruction. He took us to war in Iraq and he knew there was no weapons of mass destruction. Do you remember when the camera panned back to George Herbert Walker Bush sitting back in the audience with Barbara and he went, remember that? Trump announced that he would run for president in June of 2015. And then in the fall of 2015, the anti-Trump neocon Paul Singer, the mega donor of the Washington Free Beacon, began doing opposition research on the Trump team. What else was going on in the fall of 2015? Well, we know from the 99-page FISA court document that the FBI was giving access to third-party contractors to the NSA database. And we believe that to be Fusion GPS and CrowdStrike. Kramer also, when he was being interviewed by the House Intel Committee, this was also in the story, that no one else seems to have this information. Kramer told Nunes, House Intelligence Committee, that he knew the identity of Steele's Russian sources, but he refused to name them. There you go. David J. Kramer. Remember, this all started back in 2015, in the fall of 2015. Is it possible that David J. Kramer is hooked up with Papadopoulos and their activities actually started happening, but then once Trump won and Paul Singer bailed out, and then the Clintons took over with Fusion GPS and the whole 9 yards, is it possible that the Clintons and Bushes continued working together on the deep state coup? That would explain where Papadopoulos comes from. And David J. Kramer never went away. We need to look more into this, and I can promise you I will. Thank you for tuning in. You guys have a good night, and I'll be back tomorrow for a special Day 365 TowerGate. See ya.